Hola a todas. Gracias por acompañarme en esta Hora de Cuentos. My name is Martínez, and to celebrate the closing of my show Querencia, as well as Latinx Heritage Month, I wanted to hold space for a storytelling hour. Soy autista, así que me acomodaré leyendo hoy. I am autistic, so I will be accommodating myself by reading today. Cuentos are stories. Chisme is gossip, and andaluzadas are tall tales. Stories can be a way of entertaining, of sharing experiences, or a way of teaching. It can also be a way of shifting an existing power dynamic. Storytelling is of course an act done the world over, but the particular style and presence that storytelling has in Latinx culture is unique. I've invited my friend Lucía Rodríguez here today, a Chilean painter, curator, and educator, and together we will be sharing some cuentos for you. Some of these writings are personal and familial, some are cultural, but I can guarantee they will all be entertaining. I will start us off with a Historia de Fantasmas, a ghost story, completely made up by my late grandpa Angel. His influence on my life is felt throughout this show, and strangely it is closing today on his birthday, October 1st. So this is the first story of him. It's called The Story of Juan and Maria. One cold winter evening, a young woman named Maria was walking through the town square, lost in her own thoughts. Maria was feeling a little sad, since her older brother had just been sent to fight in a war. World War II was changing both of their lives significantly, and it was very rare now that Maria even got a letter from her brother. She was looking in at a store window display of holiday decorations when she realized she was shivering quite profusely. Maria realized she had left her coat at home in her neighborhood, which was some distance away. Oh well, she thought, still much too caught in admiring all the store's goods to turn around and walk all the way home. Maria was desperate for any distraction from thoughts of her brother at war. Suddenly, she felt a slight tap on her shoulder. Maria turned around and found a very handsome, dark-haired young man standing next to her. She was a little startled, but he offered only a friendly smile, so she relaxed. "Excuse me," he said, "but I couldn't help but notice you looked rather cold." Maria blushed a little, having a hard time meeting his gaze again. "Here," he said, handing her the black leather jacket he had been wearing. Maria happily obliged and thanked him. Here, he said, handing her the black leather jacket he had been wearing on his back. "Wear this, you'll feel much better." Maria happily obliged and thanked him. Before she could gather her thoughts to say something, the young man was speaking again. "Oh, I'm sorry, miss. I didn't even introduce myself. My name is Juan. I just got back from the army." Maria's heart gave a leap. Perhaps if this young man named Juan could make it back all right, there must be hope for her brother. She smiled. "My name is Maria," she said softly. She was suddenly aware of the scent of his jacket. It smelled like tobacco and mints, similar to her brother, but something was different about it. "Well, Maria," Juan said, "I think you still look a little cold. Perhaps I could buy you some dinner?" He grinned as she nodded at him, blushing. They walked some ways, talking about experiences they had in common in the town. It just so happened that they had gone to the same high school and knew some of the same people. Maria felt incredibly at ease with Juan and was content with the distractions he offered her. After a nice dinner, Juan begged Maria to go dancing with him. She was a little hesitant to go to the bar where her mother would not want her to go, but the opportunity for fun eventually won out. They had a great time and danced for a few hours to the blare of swing on a radio. A few other young couples were still dancing when they left the bar around midnight. They walked down the street back to the town square, hand in hand. After a little more talk, Juan suddenly seemed in a rush. "I must go home. I'm sorry. I can't walk you home because I didn't realize the time." Maria was surprised. "Whatever for? It's only just midnight." She looked over Juan's head, noticing for the first time that the moon was full and yellow. Juan noticed her distress and took Maria's hands in his own. He kissed them, apologizing again, and bade her a very sweet farewell. "Thank you, Juan," Maria called after him as he ran down the street in a hurry. Juan turned and paused for a second and called back. "Oh, Maria, do you think I might take back my jacket for the night? It was my father's. Maria blushed. Of course, I forgot all about it since it was keeping me so warm. She advanced and handed the jacket back to Juan when he told her, "You can have it back next time I see you." Maria smiled, excited by the thought. They parted ways after he gave her his address, and she hurried home with the happiest feeling she'd had since before the war. The next morning, as Maria was out gathering the day's groceries, she realized that Juan's address she had scribbled down on her hand was very near the market. Excitedly, she decided to make him a surprise visit to thank him for how kind he had been to her. She walked the 2 blocks until she got to Queen Charlotte Street, where Juan had said he lived. That's odd, Maria thought. That's right next to the Queen Charlotte Cathedral. And sure enough, when she made her way to Queen Charlotte Street, there was the cathedral looming in front of her. Maria was just about to turn around toward the square when she noticed something that made her drop her groceries. Maria quickly ran into the small graveyard that was adjunct to the cathedral and stopped in front of the first gravestone in the corner. It was freshly dug, with a small sprig of holly laid on top of the earth. Looking at the gravestone, Maria gasped. It read, "Juan Rivera, died December 15, 1941, and on a small white cross near the top of the gravestone was the black leather jacket." Yeah, I just love that my grandpa made up this story. So if you knew him. So I'm gonna hand it off to Lucía. She has a Chilean prose poem and a little bit about it too.
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, thank you so much, Amanda, for inviting me to do this. My name is Lucía Rodríguez. I'm a Chilean artist. I've been living in the US for 8 years. And Amanda's invitation was like a really nice opportunity to reconnect with my culture. And I wanted to find something that was related somehow to the work, or at least how I feel about Amanda's work. And I found this prose poem that was written by this Chilean poet called Gabriela Mistral. That was her pen name. You guys say that?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe some of you have heard about her because she was the first person in Latin America to get Nobel Prize in Literature. And I would like to talk about her a little bit because I think she's an interesting character to me because, first of all, she was a woman in the 50s writing, but also she came from a very modest environment. She was like not wealthy at all. She was completely self-made. She went to school until she was 12, and that was all the education that she got. She was taught by her sister, and she became a teacher herself. She became really well known and kind of got a lot of recognition for her writing pretty quickly, and she used that position to advocate for education, especially for kids in rural areas. And I love that about her. I think that also it's interesting the fact that most likely she was a queer person. She was very private about it, and actually I think it's kind of disrespectful that people are like so obsessed with like knowing about her sexual orientation because she was very private. Probably she had like relationships with men and women. She took care of a kid that people like to say that was her kid, but we don't know. And also on top of all that, as I grew up and I knew about her, people love to point out the fact that she was very physically ugly. And I thought that was really messed up. Because people don't say that about male writers, but they say that about female writers. But she was like a political figure. She, again, was very renowned. And also another aspect of her that for me is very relevant and I can connect with is the fact that she left Chile to have like a career. She lived in Mexico and she helped there to promote some reforms in education. And her first book was published in New York. And that's a very common story in Latin America, that people feel that they have to leave their country to be able to do what they love. I've done it. I've been like lucky enough that I've had my family support to be able to like come here. A lot of people don't have access to that. And I would love for people to not feel that they have to do that, right? So anyways, I'm gonna.
Sorry. Did
Yeah.
you also say you got the chance to visit her?
Oh yeah, I visited her home.
Yeah.
When I was 18, I traveled around Chile with a friend, and I visited her home, which now is a museum, and where she grew up when she was a little kid. It's a very simple house. It's in the north of Chile, where it's a very desertic kind of environment. So actually, the stucco kind of relates to that. And it was moving for me to like be there, and I realized that there was nothing glamorous or special about her house, you know. And also, I think that it's been preserved in part, and people like know about her in Chile because she got the Nobel Prize, and it's some sort of like external recognition to her talent that is conflicted too. Like I don't know if people would appreciate her as much. And her writing was always very mundane, very simple. And I personally have always struggled with poetry. I feel like I admire people that can write. I'm not a great writer myself. And I found this poem that I would like to read in Spanish first and then in English, because I think poetry uses a lot of the sound of language to compose itself. It's a prose poem, so it doesn't necessarily rhyme. I'll do my best. So I'm gonna read in Spanish first. El cántaro de greda. Cántaro de greda, moreno como mi mejilla, tan fácil que eres a mi sed. Mejor que tú es el labio de la fuente, abierto en la quebrada, pero está lejos y en esta noche de verano no puedo ir hacia él. Yo te colmo cada mañana lentamente. El agua canta primero al caer. Cuando queda en silencio, la beso sobre la boca temblorosa, pagando su merced. Eres gracioso y fuerte, cántaro moreno. Te pareces al pecho de una campesina que me amamantó cuando rendí el seno de mi madre. Y me acuerdo de ella mirándote y te palpo con ternura los contornos. ¿Tú ves mis labios secos? Son labios que trajeron muchas sedes, la de Dios, la de la belleza, la del amor. Ninguna de estas cosas fue como tú, sencilla y dócil, y las tres siguen blanqueando mis labios. ¿Cómo te amo? No pongo nunca a tu lado una copa. Huevo en tu mismo labio, sosteniéndote con el brazo curvado. Si en tu silencio sueñas con un abrazo, te doy la ilusión de que lo tienes. ¿Sientes mi ternura? En el verano pongo debajo de ti una arenilla dorada y húmeda, para que no te tajee el calor, y una vez te cubrí tiernamente una quebrajadura con barro fresco. Fui torpe para muchas faenas, pero siempre he querido ser la dulce dueña, la que coge las cosas con temblor de dulzura, como si entendieran por si padecieran como ella. Mañana, cuando vaya al campo, cortaré las hierbas buenas para traértelas y sumergirlas en tu agua. Sentirás el campo en el olor de mis manos. Cántaro de greda, res más bueno para mí que los que dijeron ser buenos. Yo quiero que todos los pobres tengan, como yo, en esta siesta ardiente, un cántaro fresco para sus labios con amargura. The clay pitcher, that's the name of the poem. Clay pitcher, brown as my cheek, you ease my thirst so. The leap of the stream that spills in the ravine is better than you, but it's far away, and it's summer night, I can't go to it. Each morning I fill you slowly to the brim. First the water sings as it falls. When it goes silent, I press my lip in a kiss above the trembling mouth, paying it back. You're graceful and strong, brown pitcher. You look like the bosom of the country girl who nursed me when I left my mother's breast. Looking at you, I remember her, and I touch your contours tenderly. You see my dry lips? They are lips that have tasted many thirsts, for God, for beauty, for love. But none of these thirsts were like you, simple and docile. All three dried out my lips. Because I care for you, I never set a cup beside you. I drink from your very lip, supporting you with my curved arm. If in silence you dream of an embrace, I give you the illusion of having one. Do you feel my tenderness? In the summer, I put damp golden sand beneath you, so that the heat won't bother you. And once I patch a crack in you, tenderly, with fresh mud. I failed in many things, but I always aspired to be a gentle mistress, one who set things in order with a tremulous sweetness, so you might understand, so you might sympathize with her. Tomorrow, when I go to the fields, I will pick good herbs to bring to you and soak them in your water. You will feel the field in the scent from my hands.
clearly pictured, you are better to me than those who promise to be good. I want all the poor people to have, as I do, in this burning siesta, a pitcher of fresh water for their bitter lips. And I found, when I was doing my research, this handwriting from her when she was composing the poem. And it made me think about two things. First, Amanda shared some pictures of her writings, and even the embroidery that related to your drawings made me think about that. And also, it was kind of like a good lesson for me because I feel this respect for people that can write, and you read the poem and it seems so polished and perfect. But then you see the process, right? It's like art, and she's like changing her mind 1,000 times, and it felt so alive, right? And so organic. So that's what I wanted to share today.
Thank you. I have a couple more, but this is the main other one I wanted to share. This is another story, more fabulistic, fable-like, I would say, but also completely invented by my late grandfather, Anno. And I will read this in Spanish first, and then English. My Spanish is not as good as Lucia's, but pero lo intentaré. Okay. And it's pretty short. It's called El Lago, the lake. Cuando era niña, mi abuelo nos llevaba a mi hermana y mis primas y mí a un lago para alimentar a los patos. Cuando estaban cansados de jugar, regresábamos a su casa. Me dijo que mirara por la ventana y señaló un campo al otro lado de la calle. Me dijo que solía ser un lago también. Estaba escuchando. Mi abuelo dijo: un verano, los patos desembarcaron ahí. Se divirtieron tanto en el agua que se quedaron hasta el invierno. Luego el agua se congeló cerca de sus pies. Los patos quedaron atrapados. Entonces todos comenzaron a batir sus alas juntos y cargaron el lago lejos con ellos. As a girl, my grandfather would take my sister and my cousins and I to a lake to feed the ducks. When we were tired from playing, we would return to his house. He told me to look out the window and pointed to a field across the street. He told me that used to be a lake too. I listened. Grandpa said one summer the ducks landed in there. They had so much fun in the water that they stayed until winter. Then the water froze around their feet. The ducks were trapped, so they all began to flap their wings together and carry the lake away with them. He was such a great storyteller, just in a really natural way. And I was telling Lucia, for whatever reason, while he was still alive, I had the foresight. This is like a typewriter, which I was really into in college. So I somehow had the foresight to type up these stories while he was still alive, and because otherwise I might forget parts of them or something.
That's really smart.
Yeah. Did you have another one?
No, that's all I got. I didn't have time. I'm so sorry.
No. This is wonderful.
I didn't want to just bring anything.
Yeah, I have two other really short ones. One is not made up by him. It's a really common ghost story, but this was his particular version, which I think is really succinct and nice. And I have been told that this was recently turned into a horror movie. I think there are 1 million versions of it now, but yeah. Anyways, it's called La Llorona, which is a really common ghost story. La Llorona is an old ghost story that many might know. The words translate to mean the crier, and the story goes that 200 years ago, there was a family that had settled along the Rio Grande River. The mother of the family had just had a baby a couple of months prior to their move and loved it with all her heart. As it became able to toddle around, the baby disappeared from its mother's sight one warm afternoon. Shocked, the mother ran to the river's edge to to where she had last seen her child. The child had been careless and had fallen into the river. Knowing the child was not a good swimmer yet, the mother panicked and jumped into the Rio Grande after it, not bothering to remove her heavy layers of clothing. Neither of them were seen again. Some say that when the husband returned home later that evening from plowing the fields and found his wife and child missing, and his wife's shoes next to the river's edge, he too jumped into the Rio Grande and drowned himself. But there are many more that say that on warm nights at a certain bend in the river, if you listen hard enough, you can hear the crier crying out for her lost baby. And then the last one is just sort of silly. It's like, this is just something my grandpa did growing up. It's called the hanging devil trick. My grandpa told me once about a prank he and some friends played on a man who used to wander around their homes in their neighborhood disturbing people at night. Apparently one night they took a cow skull they had found and some red car reflectors and placed them inside of the cow skull's empty eye sockets. Then they strung up the whole contraption like a piñata between some trees so that they could lower it up and down to be at human eye level. He and his friends waited patiently until the man walked into the right area, and then they quickly released the string so that the cow skull appeared to be floating towards him. The reflectors shone just enough light inside the empty eye sockets that they seemed to be glowing. The poor man was so afraid that he ran away from the area, yelling that he had seen the devil that night.
That's awesome.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you
thank
for
you.
sharing. Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for sharing the stories from your grandpa. I think that's really cool that you have that documentation.
Yeah, and he really is throughout the show. Like, he's the one who grew up like that piece right there in an adobe house in La Mesa, New Mexico. Like, they had a dirt floor. Like, it was the real deal. And yeah, he's kind of all throughout the show. So it felt right to tell his stories. Yeah, thank you.